Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and usually I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal, but this week we have a special guest from the UK, and he wasn't able to join us. Joining the show, Leigh Remedios, MMA pioneer, a former #1 UK lightweight fighter, and someone who's got a late call and is competing in the Polaris 10 event this Saturday on UFC Fight Pass. Leigh, thanks for joining us.
No worries. Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. So we'll get into some of your history and some of the stuff that really interests me about your early MMA career in a bit here. But, you've been out of action for a little bit as far as big name events go. What does it feel like to get back into the action here with a big show like Polaris on Fight Pass?
They probably won't want me to say this, but if I'm honest, it's kind of a ball ache. It's kind of a hassle. I'm an engineer. I run my own gym. I'm a family guy. Putting in camps and stuff isn't really what I want to do anymore. I'm in my 40s now, but I got asked to fight Caol Uno, and you can't say no, right? Here we are.
Yeah, well, that's what that was my next question is the fact that it's Caol Uno, did that heavily sway your opinion, or at least your as far as you wanting to get in on it, was being a big name like that a major reason for jumping back into the action?
Yeah. So Polaris contacted me before last year, I think it was, because they needed a step-in to fight in Minari, and I said, well, yeah, I do that as well. But I did kind of make it clear that I didn't just want to take fights on their show just to fight a domestic guy or anything like that. Not because I think I'm better at all. I mean, I don't think I'm better than a lot of the UK guys, but I just don't want to have to put in the big camp and everything else for someone that's not going to excite me. And that probably sounds quite rude, and I don't mean it to. But someone like Imanari or Caol Uno, that's exciting, right? So yeah, I'll jump in and I'll do that. But it's not something that I care to make a career of. So it's just fun for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense to me. For the fans that haven't been MMA fans for as long as I have, or competed as long as you have, Caol Uno is a kind of a Japanese MMA legend, especially as a representative in the UFC. Fought BJ Penn and several other guys. Actually fought BJ Penn twice. Fought for the title to a draw at one time. So and he's been around forever. Still competes, I believe, in some of the in Road FC or some of the kind of off smaller Japanese organizations today, maybe Shudo, such like that. But thinking back to kind of his fighting style, he always kind of seemed like more of kind of just an aggressive, not so much an aggressive, but kind of a wrestler, get top position, kind of control the fights. Do you see anything about his style? What do you think are his strengths and his weaknesses when it comes to a submission grappling match?
From his MMA fights, I think he's a very good boxer. Probably underrated as a boxer. I don't think people appreciate how good his hands are. He's obviously very athletic, and he's mentally very strong. His wrestling is decent. I don't think it's world class. Neither's mine. That's not too important, I suppose. His jiu-jitsu is probably similar to mine, I think. MMA based, look to take people down, look to get on top. Passing guard isn't strong for MMA fighters generally because we punch our way through the guard. I haven't seen too much of him online, just pure grappling, but what I've seen, he looks like a guy who's come from MMA, like I have. I know he got silver at the ADCC, the 77 kilos, years ago, and he just recently, I think, won the Asian Masters at the purple belt. So he's obviously in the game and doing very well with his jiu-jitsu. As far as strengths and weaknesses, I think he's going to be well-rounded. Maybe not as experienced as a pure jiu-jitsu guy. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Your sound's going in and out a little bit. Can you try to move your camera a little bit closer to you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. It dropped out a little bit there, but yeah, you were saying he's basically really similar to your style as far as an MMA fighter, and
I mean, as far as MMA goes, he's certainly better than me. He's achieved much more than I have in the sport. And in an MMA fight, I think he punched holes in me. But I think in jiu-jitsu, he's probably similar sort of style to me. I think coming from MMA, he's going to be looking for the top position, and probably more looking for positional play rather than submission. But I could be wrong on that.
What are the rule sets for the bout? I believe is Polaris 1 10-minute round, or what? Do you know what the rules are going into it?
Yeah, kind of. So I got the call 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, really. And they asked if I'd do it, and I said, yeah, okay. It's a 10-minute match, right? And they said, no, you're on main card, so it's 15 minutes. So I've got to fight for 15 minutes. Yeah. All submissions are legal, so heel hooks, neck cranks, all that stuff. That's all allowed. No slamming out of submissions. So if you're taking someone down, you can do big fancy aerial throws, but you can't power bomb your way out of a submission.
Have you had a bunch? I thought I saw you competed maybe in the ADCC recently. Have you had some other stuff some competitions recently to kind of get you ready for this?
No, because as I said, I took a 2 week notice. No, I didn't do the ADCC. I competed in the ADCC old man division a couple of years ago in the UK, just as a bit of fun. I do quite a lot of jiu-jitsu competitions. I compete in jiu-jitsu very, very regularly. But my most recent competitions have been in the gi, and 3 weeks ago I did a judo competition as well.
Okay, maybe that's what was throwing me off. I saw on your Instagram you got on the podium a couple times though, right?
Yeah. I do quite well in jiu-jitsu competitions generally, mainly because of my extensive MMA background, right? So when I'm competing against in jiu-jitsu against guys that probably have less experience grappling than me, so it's a little bit unfair, I suppose. But yeah, I do tend to do okay.
What's your weight like going into this match? What's the weight class and where are you at as far as weight?
So I guess we'll work in pounds because most of your listeners are going to be in the States, right?
Yes.
So actually both of those. In kilos, it's 70.3, which is about 155, with a 1 pound allowance, so a 0.5 allowance. So 70.8 is the limit. So about 155 pounds. 156 pounds. Sorry, 156 pounds is what I've got to make. And when I got the call, I was about 148. So I'm a few pounds under. And the weigh-in is the day before, so I can only assume that he's going to cut weight. My guess is that he will go back in at around 160 to 163, probably about 73, 74 kilos. I'm going to go in at about 69, 70 kilos. So I'm going to go back in at about 152, 154. So I'm expecting to give away a little bit of weight, maybe 10 pounds, not a massive amount, but a little bit.
How far is that weight off from what you used to compete at in MMA? Were you always the underside? I mean, there really was no bantamweight and featherweight divisions back then. Everything was lightweight if you were even able to get that lucky. Was that the weight you pretty much competed at?
You're absolutely right. It was difficult to find lightweight fights when I first started competing, but I had quite a long career, 15 years or so. So over that time, the lighter weight classes came in, and I started competing at lightweight more regularly. But then guys were cutting weight and coming back in way, way bigger than me. I used to walk at about 154. So I dropped to featherweight, and then by the end of my career, I was fighting at bantamweight, so 135 pounds.
What so now getting into some of your MMA stuff, what was it that how did you get into that at such an early age? I mean, I see at least on Fight Finder or on your record, your first official pro match was like in 1997. That in the United States, MMA was still fairly underground at that point. UFC was around UFC 10 or 11 or so. but it wasn't, unless you were a hardcore fan, you really weren't aware of it. What was it like in the UK as far as getting involved in it at such an early time in the sport?
It wasn't the UK. I fought in Vancouver in Canada. There was nothing in the UK at the time, or nothing that I was aware of. Maybe there was, but I wasn't aware of it in the UK.
But did you? I'm sorry, but did you live in the UK or did you live in Canada at the time?
So I was living in the UK and I had family in Canada. So I went on holiday, and they had some guys training. Jason Farron was teaching there. He fought in UFC 4. And so I went and joined in and did a bit of training. And I said, look, this stuff looks amazing. You know, you get to go into a cage and have a fight and just smash someone, or they smash you, but you've got a referee and his friends aren't going to join in. So that sounds amazing. And he trained me, and I took some fights.
So when you didn't really know much about MMA until you visited family in Canada, or was it something you were aware of in the UK? That's kind of what I was asking. I mean, was it something
Right.
you were aware of, and then you just had to go to Canada for fights? Or
well, I read martial arts magazines because I was always fascinated with combat, and so I'd read about the UFC, but nobody on the street knew what it was at all, not at all. And even people who did martial arts didn't know what it was. And we still didn't really understand what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was, or anything about, like, this guy who was Gracie winning everything. We didn't understand how that worked. But I'd also seen some fights out of Japan. They had shoot fighting and stuff, and then they had the professional wrestling UWFI, which was aired over here. So we got to see. I mean, those were work fights, but it was much more realistic than, say, the pro wrestling that we were seeing. So we got to see some kickboxing mixed with some grappling and some submission. And so I had a little bit of an idea about what it was, but I had nowhere to learn any of it.
What? So you started training under Jason Farron. At that time, you mentioned he fought at UFC 4 against Guy Metzger. In kind of an interesting match because they both had long hair early in the times, and apparently there was an agreement that neither of them would pull hair when it was legal. So that's kind of a little interesting fact about his one UFC bout. I think it was his only UFC bout. Did he fight Christoph Leninger later on, or do you recall?
Jason and I kind of drifted apart after about a year or so. So we kept in contact a little bit, but I don't know. I don't think he had much of a successful career after that, which is a shame because he was really quite good. Much better than anyone really got to see.
What was his? I'm trying to think back to his style, and like you said, he didn't have a huge career, so there wasn't a lot to go back on. But he seemed like his fight with Metzger was a stand-up fight. Did what was it? Just MMA training, or at the time it was basically no holds barred? Was it just no holds barred training, or was it any kind of focus on a certain art?
Yes, specifically he was jiu-jitsu, and he was good. He was really good at jiu-jitsu, in a gi and no gi, and he was good at making it work in MMA. You wouldn't have thought so from watching his fights because he didn't get to show it. He fought Bob Gilstrap whilst I was training with him, and he did really well and then gassed and lost that fight. But the focus was definitely on jiu-jitsu. With jiu-jitsu based MMA, well, NHB.
So you how long did you train before you started to fight? I mean, obviously, I've heard some of your other interviews where you kind of grew up not afraid of necessarily confrontation, I would say. But what was it something that you just felt natural doing? I mean, how long did you train before you jumped in the cage?
Well, I already had a black belt in Taekwondo before I met Jason. Not that means anything, but I mean, just to demonstrate that I'd put some time in martial arts and competing and training. The Taekwondo techniques weren't really very useful. I mean, a bit of footwork maybe, and a little bit of kicking, but not a lot. It's really transferable. But I had trained in combat sports. Then when I trained with Jason, it's going to sound like a short time. I trained 6 months before having my first pro fight. But I had my first fight in the cage at the back of his gym on the first week I turned up, I said, look, I want to fight. And he goes, well, do you want to fight one of my guys this weekend? I said, yeah, okay. So I had a scrap at the back, and I lost. I didn't know any jiu-jitsu, and I cracked the guy in the face, punched him, and he took my back and choked me. But I trained with Jason just for 6 months, but that probably doesn't tell the full story, because I was training probably 20 to 30 hours a week. So it's not like I was just turning up to classes 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, I was doing, let me think, I was doing, and non-stop. I didn't miss one class for the 6 months, and I did 10 2-hour classes every week. So at least 20 hours a week, and then any extra training I did on top. So I was training very, very intensively. So in that 6 months, I improved quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and then at that time, it was a different world as far as if you got training like that under somebody who actually knew what they were doing, you were kind of ahead of the game in a lot of those events.
Yeah, like you're absolutely right. A lot of the fights I took, the guys were coming in and their style was like street fighting, or like some crazy Korean name that you've never heard of, right? Some made up martial art, and the guys, and they were trying to flick their feet around, and they thought they'd done a bit of grappling from watching tapes and stuff, right? But when I trained under Jason, we had some like legitimately good coaching on how to grapple people for MMA, so it was a huge advantage.
What so you went from the there in Canada, getting some matches, and your official record has you winning your first four fights before you faced Dennis Hallman, another guy who at the time was a pretty highly ranked and respected fighter, has 2 wins over Matt Hughes in his career, fought Jens Pulver at UFC 33 for the title, came up short in that bout, but somebody who was a well-respected competitor, still is, just competed actually 2 weeks ago at Submission Underground. He lost to Craig Jones, who's one of the top grapplers in the world, and also competing at Polaris this weekend. But you know,
a lot younger than Dennis as well.
Yeah, I think he's closer to 50 at this point. So I see him as your first professional pro loss. Once you got on a roll and then you suffered that first loss, you came back and won. Was there anything? I mean, it was obviously a different time. I keep bringing back the different times because a loss back then wasn't like they kind of treat a loss now. Now maybe not personally to you. Obviously, a loss probably sucks, but. Was it a learning experience at that point? I know you said you lost kind of your first, smoker match, behind the scenes match, but what was there something about that loss, fighting such a high level competitor, that kind of set you off for the next few years?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, in as much as I think most of my MMA career, if not all of it, was along that same sort of vein. I didn't have specific coaching aside from Jason in the beginning. So all of my fights were all trial and error. It was all learning. I never did it as a career. I never supported myself with fighting. It was only ever a hobby. So the whole time I did it, it was all about learning. When I lost to Dennis, what let me down was my cardio. Now, I'm not going to say that if I was fitter, I could have done any better. I don't know. But I gasped very hard in that fight, and I realized, okay, well, maybe I should try and figure out how to work on cardio. But I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to train stamina. I mean, we didn't have the information we have today. How do you work cardio? Do you go running? Do you do sprint training? Do you do circuit training? Do you do a lot more sparring? That stuff was all trial and error for years and years and years, and it's difficult to try and figure it out. So I guess to answer the question, yeah, it told me that I need to train differently, but it didn't really give me much guidance.
At what point did you at what point did you realize that this was something you were going to be really good at, and you start to get recognized by the MMA community as a whole? Obviously when you made the UFC, you didn't have a flawless record, but you were universally recognized. I mean, as somebody who went through and I used to read like the fight cards from tape trader websites, and you know, back then you tried to get your hands on whatever you could, and after I searched out, you know, Brazil and Russia, and you know, you kind of came to the UK because that was, you know, it became kind of a newer, you know, something that was kind of strange for a foreigner, you know, in another event, and I'd see your names on the back of some of those events, and later, you know, guys like Michael Bisping, and that's kind of how I started recognizing them. Was there a point where all of a sudden you realized you were the #1 lightweight in the UK, and kind of it, you know, I mean, what was that like, and or did it never really mean anything to you? I guess I should say.
Well, you know, I did a couple of amateur tournaments in the UK, and I won them. But those aren't on my record. So that was quite a confidence, I suppose. But we didn't have rankings or anything like that back then. So you just had to kind of go onto internet forums, see who people were thinking were the best, and then try and fight them. But it didn't really interest me that much to try and fight all the best guys. And I mean, I was just doing it for a laugh, really. You know, I like to train, I like to fight, give it a go. And whilst I think I was probably recognized as the best lightweight fighter at the time in the UK, I don't think that means much, and I don't mean to disrespect anyone. But there's only about 4 or 5 of us fighting in that weight class anyway, right? And I was probably the only one who had any sort of jiu-jitsu grappling experience. So a lot of the guys were tough guys, but they didn't have the training that I'd had, because they were coming from a kickboxing background or maybe some judo. So it wasn't really apples with apples, and it wasn't really fair to say that I was the best fighter universally. Just I'd had a head start. That was
all. Was there ever a goal to fight in the UFC? I mean, obviously that was the big thing, but when they called and gave you a chance to go fight for them, was that a big moment for you, or was it just another day of competing?
I get you have to understand that back then I was a very different person to who I am now. I mean, that's half my life away, right? So I was just a young man, and so it can be a little bit difficult for me to try and remember exactly how my feelings were and my thought processes were at the time. Looking at the UFC, you know, that was always great, and that would have always been a dream to fight in the UFC. And I always thought, you know, I'm not far away. You know, I'm getting better, and I'm not far away from being able to fight. But I always felt that same way, that I'm not quite good enough yet. And then they came to the UK. I was the #1 lightweight. So in I went, right? And even then, I still think to myself, well, I'm not ready for the UFC. But you know, like this match with Uno, I mean, when you get asked to do something cool, you've got to take it, right?
And then, you know, and then they gave you one of the legendary fighters, you know, in Ginke Sudo, who was really, you know, he retired early in his career, but was really a spectacular fighter. Did it disappoint you that they didn't give you another opportunity?
Yeah, at the time it did. But looking back, I think, well, I don't think I would have been ready anyway. So, I mean, they didn't have any lighter divisions, and I was, you know, I got on the scales for that fight. Well, hang on. Before I say that, I want to make it very clear that that's not an excuse, and the weight wasn't a factor in that fight. But I got on those scales at like 153 pounds after breakfast with a drink in my hand. So I mean, I was really, really light. Genki wasn't a big guy anyway, so for that fight, it wasn't an issue. I didn't notice the size difference. But when you've got huge guys that cut weight, I mean, you start naming the guys that cut weight that are massive at the lightweight division, but they only had the lightweight division, and guys that are walking around at 180 pounds, cutting 155. I couldn't afford those guys. And I probably would have suffered some severe injuries trying to fight those guys. So, in retrospect, I think it's probably a good thing that I didn't get asked to fight again.
And I don't want to talk too much about the fight because it didn't necessarily go your way. But
I mean, I'm not a sensitive soul. You know, I'm not thin-skinned.
No, I know, and there's nothing wrong, obviously, with suffering a loss to Sudo. his
I can't deny it.
I know. But some people are more sensitive and don't like to talk about their losses, but not everybody's like I said. It was a different era back then. Even up to that point, not a lot of booing. You didn't get, there was a little bit more respect for the fighters. I felt like it was a smaller crowd, but you didn't suffer the humiliation, I guess, that fans try to put some fighters through now when they suffer a loss.
Yeah,
I mean, at least from the fans' perspective, you didn't have social media bashing you. I mean, obviously, like I said, as a fan, just seeing you in the UFC at that time, you were just, as a fan, I saw fighters like that as just the best in the world. And whether people thought, they were or they weren't, that's how fans saw them. There wasn't a whole lot of events at that time. So I would see your name fighting there, and then I would see you jump into Cage Rage or Hook and Shoot from that point on. But basically my question is, with Pseudo has a really interesting style. For fans that don't see him, he kind of does a breakdancing, robotic, lots of movement in the cage. Was that something you were aware of going into that bout?
Yeah. He fights like a normal fighter. But he goes and he dances around a little bit, and you wait for him to finish his dancing, and then you fight him normally, right? If I was more experienced, I would have capitalized while he was dancing. I'd have run over and cracked him, but I didn't have the confidence in my skills at the time.
Well, not a lot of people did that, but
yeah. I mean, he does. I may have mentioned this somewhere else in the past, but he has this spinning technique, and he used it effectively in his K1 Max fight, where he does like a spinning back fist. He turns his back, lures you in, and then he does a spinning back fist. But he also does a spinning back kick, and so you don't know which is coming. So you don't want to rush in and expect the back fist and then walk into a kick in the guts or something, right? So it's best I just stood off, let him finish what he was doing, and then engage him.
So as you moved on in your career, you fought for, like I had previously mentioned, Cage Rage, which I think was pretty much universally recognized as the #1 UK organization. Is that fair to say? For example, one card, you were on the main card where the main event was Anderson Silva versus Leigh Murray. Anderson wasn't the Anderson at that time. He was up and coming, and obviously was known for some of his early matches, but not the superstar that he became post Pride and obviously his UFC run. Any crazy stories that jump out fighting on cards with some of those big names that you can think of that you can talk about?
Second, sorry.
No problem.
So I'm on my phone and it's dialing in. So sorry to disappoint you. No, I don't. I mean, I shared a sauna with Anderson, and he was a very pleasant guy, really, really big. But no, I don't really have any crazy stories to tell you. I mean, at that, when you're coming up to a fight show, everyone's just focused on fighting, right? Everyone's trying to make weight. Nobody really wants to chat too much. Everyone's just been cutting weight for a week or 2 weeks, and you just want to get in there and get on the scales and get in and fight and go home again. So yeah, I can't really tell you too much. I mean, apart from the obviously famous one, which was the Tito Ortiz Murray fight in London, but I missed it because I went to bed early. I just fought and I went home and I went back to the hotel and went to sleep.
Were you acquaintances with Leigh Murray? Was he somebody that you knew in the scene?
Yeah. I got on all right with Leigh. Yeah, he was all right.
And again, for fans that don't know, Leigh Murray was a tremendously skilled fighter who was eventually arrested for one of the biggest bank heists in the history of the world.
Yeah. The Securitas. I don't know, what did he make? Like, it was like 60 million or something like that.
It was some astronomical number.
Yeah, I mean, I trained with him a couple of times. We hung out once or twice. Yeah, he was always very, very nice to me. Yeah. So yeah, that's it.
What what were the crowds like? Do you have any idea? Do you recall what kind of crowd numbers would a cage rage event get back then? Was it 1,500, or were you dealing with crowds of 5 to 10,000 at those events?
Right, let me think. Because they changed venues as they grew. They used to run cage rage originally out of Caesar's nightclub in London, and that was pretty small. So I don't know. I'm gonna guess at about maybe less than 1,000, or maybe I don't know. I mean, sorry, Dave and Andy. If I've bastardized your numbers there. Then they went to the Wembley Conference Centre, and that was a nice venue, really, really nice. Like a big auditorium. I think they had, I don't know, I'm guessing, I think they had about 3,000 in there, maybe not that many. And then they expanded into the main Wembley Hall, and they had some big, much bigger numbers there. Certainly a few thousand, but I can't feel it from my head. Great.
No, I understand. I was just kind of curious on what level it was at that time.
It did like when they moved to the Wembley Conference Centre, they had, and that's why I think they had about 3,000 people. That's when they brought in guys like Vitor Belfort to fight. I fought John Silver there, and Vanderlei Silva was in his corner when Vanderlei was like fight champion. So it was a really, really big event then. That was really good, really good. And then they expanded even more, and really became effectively the #1 European promotion.
Did you fight on any of the cards with Tank Abbott?
No.
No.
I never met him.
So that's kind of your only fights in the United States were for hook and shoot. Is that right, or that you can recall?
Yeah, I did. One, two, three, four fights with hook and shoot, I think. Yeah.
Now getting to today. Obviously, you're a strong member on the MMAcommunity.com forum. That's kind of I saw you on the underground prior to that, but that's kind of where a lot of, at least myself. I mean, I knew you as a fighter, but as far as kind of personal and as being a fan of the sport and stuff like that. Who are the guys that you like watching today? I mean, do you
MMA?
Yes, or grappling, or just anybody you like to watch compete?
I'm going to be boring. I'm going to tell you that I don't really like watching fighting. It sounds so terrible, but it's much of a muchness, right? It's the same. You watch guys fight, and they're all good and they're all well-rounded. And it's, I mean, if I'm watching it, it's just for a name, really. Like, if Conor McGregor's fighting, well, it's Conor McGregor, so I'll watch that fight. If it's Khabib, if it's any of the champions, if he's got John Jones coming back for the 8th time or whatever, I'll watch that. But I don't really watch much of combat sport, really. And as far as jiu-jitsu, oh my god, how boring is that to watch? I mean, I don't want to put anyone off, but especially the gi stuff, I just find it really, really boring. I love to compete in it, but if I'm watching it, I'm only watching it for technical details that I can pick up for my own game. Like to watch two guys playing in pajamas, sitting on their bums. Oh, Yawnarama. Sorry if my anyone.
No. It can be slow. The events like Polaris and the EBI tournaments and stuff, they've done what they can to kind of make them more exciting. The finish only and stuff like that. Is your match now, if it goes coming up this Saturday, if that goes to the if it goes 15 minutes, is it an automatic draw or do they have judges? Do you know?
They've got some scoring system where they score each 5 minutes separately. But there's no break. It's a 15-minute match. But every 5 minutes, and then the judges will determine who won that 5-minute period. So then at the end, you can get a decision.
I got a few more questions. I'm kind of interested on the Michael Bisping is getting elected or not elected, but put in the UFC Hall of Fame here coming up on July 5th. Was he somebody that you were? Was he a big name around there, or did he become a bigger name in the United States? I mean, was he somebody you were around or trained with at any point?
I don't know how much I should say here. I don't want him to beat me up. So I used to get on with Mike quite well. and then we had a bit of a falling out, so we didn't get on so well after that. And I don't want to give too many details because I don't want him to come in and then punch me.
No, I got you.
Like he thought I was trolling him, and I wasn't, which I understand why, because I troll a lot of people. But he thought I was trolling him, and I genuinely wasn't. I used to get on really well with Mike.
Was
angry
he,
and he? Sorry, go on.
Oh, I know. Go ahead. Finish your story.
Okay, so yeah, I was at an event, and he thought I was trolling him, and he threatened to punch me if I didn't walk away, and I said, well, I can't walk away, right? I can't do that. Fortunately, he didn't punch me, because I mean that would have been a bad day for me. But we never really spoke again after that.
When he made his name on The Ultimate Fighter, was he a recognizable face in the UK, or was it?
No, I knew who he was, of course. I mean, and at that period, I got on really well with him. But nobody in the UK was really well known because it wasn't televised. Right? I mean, within the MMA circles, within the community, he was well known, you know, as being very, very good. He won Cambridge. I think he won every title in the UK. He was definitely the top fighter in the UK in his weight class. But MMA is such a niche sport that he wasn't recognised mainstream. But when he went to fight in the Ultimate Fighter, he was clearly the best guy in the UK.
Would he be noticed walking the streets today, or is it still not that kind of recognition?
I would. Yeah, I think he would be. Yeah. Nowadays, I mean, UFC's blown right up, right? So yeah, I think it's probably no question that he gets popped in the street. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him for years. But I would assume he gets popped all the time in the street.
All right. Well, yeah. Like I said, he gets put in the Hall of Fame June 5th. I think that'll also be on UFC Fight Pass. It's pretty much all I got, Leigh. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Want to wish you the best of luck this Saturday. Again, that's Polaris 10. I believe it starts at 4 p.m. Eastern time here in the United States. I'm not sure exactly what that translates to. I think that's 8 p.m. Your time in the UK or so.
Well, I think the undercard starts around 6 p.m. over here.
Okay.
So depending which time zone you're in the US, that could be anywhere between 5 to 8 hours time difference.
I'm not sure if Fight Pass is showing the entire card or just the top 6 or 7 matches.
Okay.
So that might be where I saw that time, but I could be a little bit off. Like I said, best of luck there. Loaded card, guys like Richie Martinez, Uriah Faber in the main event against Nicky Ryan.
I kind of feel like I've got a bit of imposter syndrome here. I'm on this main card with all these big names, and I think, you know, I could do a bit of jiu-jitsu for a hobby. So here we are.
No, but I mean, you paid your dues, and you're somebody who I think it's great. I mean, I'm always a fan of the old school fighters, and you know, I'll be watching, getting a chance to see you compete again, and.
But my point, like I go and train with other people. I train with these young guys, and they all just spank me. They just bash me up, and I think I'm on Polaris, and these guys, you know, nobody knows who they are, and it's not really fair.
Well, they got you matched up well with Uno. I mean, obviously the new generation, the Nicky Ryans and stuff like that are.
Yeah, I want no part of that. If anyone from Polaris is watching, don't come back.
Yeah, that guy's he's a savant when it comes to MMA, and again, fans should check him out. I think he's about 17 years old now, and he's tapped out everybody from Imanari to.
He's an elite level black belt. I know he's not a black belt, but he is an elite level black belt. Effectively, he's very, very, very good.
Yeah, he's the epitome of what you're going to get that we always kind of thought you were going to get when you start seeing guys who competed since they were, you know, born basically. And he has a brother, Gordon Ryan, who's again another incredible submission fighter. So again, best of luck. I'll throw out the MMAcommunity.com forum.
Right.
Everybody can see Leigh there. He's one of the moderators. I also post there as much as I can. Leigh, do you have any sponsors or your Twitter handle or Instagram, anything you want to throw out?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. Yeah, no problem. Or add me on Facebook if you like. Yeah, I've got some sponsors. I'll give them a shout out if I can remember them all off the top of my head. So Funky Gums, Gum Shields, and Grapple Kings and Eurobash brand, Hawks Fitness UK, Samurai Piercing, and Bad Boy Supplements. I know that's a ton. Sorry, guys. But I do appreciate everything that they do for me.
No problem. Again, that's Polaris 10 this Saturday on UFC Fight Pass. Leigh, thanks for joining me, and I hope to talk to you in the near future after your big win on Saturday.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Leigh.
Bye-bye.